Unexpectedly abandoned after my father-in-law's death, the 75M will reveal incredible secrets. Claire's heart raced as she sat at the kitchen table, the paper containing her father-in-law's final wishes clutched in her trembling hands. The will had been read that morning, but the shockwaves of its contents rippled through her like an earthquake, threatening to fracture her family further. Mark, her husband, had become a ghost in their home, retreating into a whirlwind of guilt and anger. How could Daniel, a man who had built their world, leave behind an estate of $75 million to his estranged son while completely ignoring Claire, his daughter-in-law? She felt abandoned, cast aside as though she were nothing more than an afterthought in a grand narrative woven tightly around wealth and legacy. In a close-knit community like theirs, this betrayal felt even more profound. Claire had dedicated her life to caring for others, her patients at the hospital, her own children, but it seemed no one had cared for her. She felt her dreams of a harmonious family fractured overnight, the idyllic image of holiday gatherings and familial support fading into a haunting reminder that nothing was as solid as it seemed. The air in the house was thick with resentment. Each meal became a performance, smiles strained, laughter forced. As Mark buried himself deeper into the family business, Claire chose silence, grappling with the emotions locked inside her chest. Disappointment and fear gnawed at her like a persistent itch she couldn't scratch. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With every passing day, Claire could feel the cracks in her marriage widening. When Mark finally looked at her, it was filled with a mix of guilt and anger. He often questioned her loyalty, and every pointed comment about the family's legacy felt like an accusation. The world she had built was crumbling, a structure of trust reduced to ruins, and Claire found herself trapped in her own home. Ideas of vengeance flirted dangerously close to the surface of her thoughts, but she hesitated, fear and disbelief weighing heavily on her conscience. Then Lena stepped into her life. The formidable business partner of her late father-in-law, Lena enveloped Claire in her unwavering support, recounting tales of Daniel's ambition. In Lena's eyes, Claire glimpsed the chance to reclaim her dignity not through money, but through the power of knowledge. The family business wasn't just a job, it was tangled in years of secrets hidden in vaults, choices steeped in untold struggles. Could unraveling the truth bring her back from the brink? As Claire immersed herself in the details of the estate, mountains of documents, stained histories, and connections she'd never fathomed before, it became clear, understanding was her rescue. Yet, each new piece only deepened the conflict within. Should she expose Mark's entitlement, a glaring chasm widening between them, or find a way to mend? As Claire prepared to confront Mark, her breath hitched with unease. She clutched a stack of papers filled with revelations, wisdom, and leverage that could claim back what she felt she'd lost. Just as she was ready to take a step forward, a new discovery presented itself, a twist that might shift everything once again. With her heart pounding and resolve solidifying, she stood at the precipice, teetering between love and betrayal, justice and forgiveness. What would this newfound knowledge mean for them? A path to reconciliation or yet another fracture? Claire's mind wrestled with the implications as she took a deep breath. Standing on the edge of a monumental decision that could redefine her life and stir the dark waters of her family's legacy forever. Claire paced the living room, the papers in her hands feeling heavier with each passing moment. The weight of her father-in-law's betrayal bore down on her, but the revelations she had uncovered were even more perplexing. What had initially unfolded as a trivial minor detail now dangled over her head like a sword ready to drop. The newfound truths about Daniel's business connections and debt-laden investments complicated the narrative that had been presented to her, morphing her perspective on the inheritance from wealth to tangled obligation. Each revelation felt like stepping stones into an unknown. While looking over the specifics of the business, Claire couldn't spring into action. Doubt rooted her feet to the floor. Should I confront Mark with this? She asked herself, wrestling with her next move. The fragile tension of a marriage already on rocky ground loomed over her like a storm cloud. While sharing her findings might force a dialogue, it could also ignite the smoldering resentment between them, a risk she was grappling with. In those quiet moments, she started imagining the possibilities. If Mark found out his father had been anything but a guardian of wealth, would he shift his antiquated view of family loyalty? Or would she only deepen his sense of betrayal, guiding her husband further away? Claire's mind raced through the labyrinth of potential outcomes. Each thought led her to consider her own role and the price of emotional engagement. When Lena had first introduced her to the depths of the business, it sparked a flame of ambition that had laid dormant for too long. Claire had always been the caregiver, the anchor for those around her. But now, she felt an urge to reclaim her identity, to extend her role beyond that of a wife and mother. The thought of forging her path within the estate, perhaps shaping it into something meaningful rather than merely a byproduct of inheritance, grew tantalizing. She focused on the specifics, labeling documents and highlighting connections that had not been noted during the will's reading. During the quiet evenings when Mark disappeared into his own troubled thoughts, Claire stayed awake, poring over financial reports and sifting through old emails. She noted the discrepancies between Daniel's public persona and his private dealings, unraveling the charade with each piece of evidence. It wasn't just about the money or legacy, it was about understanding a whole life lived behind a veil. But in those long hours, realization struck. She had begun to reshape her understanding of familial loyalty and legacy. The pieces of paper before her were not just cold transactions. They were the remnants of a life filled with choices and mistakes. If she exposed those hidden truths, what would it mean for her own family's legacy? Would it shatter everything, or could it be the catalyst for a healthier family narrative? Determined, Claire made a strategic plan, disregarding both revenge and reconciliation for the moment. Information could be her key to empowerment, a tool that brought balance rather than chaos. It would take courage to approach Mark, but approaching him armed with knowledge could level the playing field. Just as she felt ready to reach out to him, the phone rang. Lena's voice on the other end took her by surprise. "We need to talk," Lena said, a cryptic urgency lacing her tone. Nothing short of a full confrontation waited on the other side of that call, and Claire sensed it might shift everything she'd been building. What new secrets could turn the tide? Claire muttered to herself, a mix of anxiety and excitement coursing through her veins. As she moved to answer the call, she couldn't shake off the thoughts swirling in her mind. Would she finally embark on a journey of personal growth, or would it lead to another tumultuous upheaval, plunging her deeper into the shadows of her father-in-law's legacy? Claire cleared her throat, the weight of Lena's words hanging heavily in the air. "What is it?" she asked, trying to steady her voice, though concern quivered at its edges. "We need to meet in person." "There's too much at stake," Lena insisted, her tone bridging anxiety and urgency. "It's south about the estate." A flash of intuition surged within Claire, mind racing ahead with every conceivable scenario. Forced to confront Lena could fracture her fragile plans, yet the potential insights Lena held were alluring. "When and where?" Claire replied, grounding her thoughts with determination. "Tomorrow at noon, the cafe downtown." The call ended abruptly, leaving Claire in a whirlwind of questions. The cafe had been a favorite spot for their casual discussions, the memory tinged with a bittersweet nostalgia. Tomorrow, it would be a battlefield of sorts, a space transformed into a venue for unearthing hidden truths while risking her relationship with Mark. That evening, as Claire prepared for bed, she reflected on her journey thus far. The contrast between her former self, subdued and compliant, and the woman blossoming within her was stark. The shift had been subtle but powerful. She was no longer merely reacting to life as circumstances. She was taking deliberate steps toward empowerment, even if it was fraught with risks. Once the bane of her days, these late-night hours had become fuel for her resolve. Each spreadsheet she analyzed, each email she dissected, had widened her scope of understanding about the business. She grasped the dysfunction entwined in both Daniel's legacy and Mark's blindness to the family's financial reality. Leaning into that knowledge now seemed not just a possibility, but a necessity for survival of herself and her family. Bedtime routine completed, she grabbed her laptop and returned to the documents she had laid out before her. The rectangular screens illuminated the chaos of numbers and words, each line revealing fragments of desperation masked by sophistication. She felt like an archaeologist, unearthing artifacts of a life previously understood through a lens of admiration that now felt naive. As she combed through them once more, patterns emerged. The mounting debts, the furtive deals that never made it into conversation, all pointed toward a man who lived two lives, a public benefactor and a schooled manipulator in private. What could have led Daniel to intertwine success with deception? Claire pondered, wrestling with the weight of empathy in her heart. At the juncture of realization, her pulse quickened. This wasn't merely about confronting Mark. This journey was about herself, her agency, and perhaps even redemption. The ghosts of her father-in-law's choices couldn't haunt her if she claimed ownership of her own narrative. The following morning dawned with a sharp crispness. Each breath felt invigorated by the potential of change. Pausing before the mirror, Claire examined her reflection, scarcely recognizing the woman staring back. She saw not just the wife and mother, but an individual capable of navigating turbulence, ready to reshape familial legacies and confront deep-seated fears. Arriving at the cafe, the heart of her trepidation pulsed beneath her calm facade. Lena was seated at a table near the back, an expression of grave concern etched on her face. A moment sat suspended as Claire approached, steel in her spine but vulnerability in her heart. This meeting could pivot everything: the truth of her father-in-law's life, the dynamics with Mark, and ultimately, Claire's evolution as she demanded the agency to reclaim her life. The moment they locked eyes, Claire felt the weight of what lay ahead coalescing. Would this encounter provide her with the clarity she desperately needed, or plunge her deeper into conflict? "Tell me everything," Claire said, a trembling anticipation underscoring her words. Lena drew in a breath, her eyes darting around the cafe as if assessing for eavesdroppers. Claire felt a shiver of apprehension. This wasn't just casual chatter over coffee. The atmosphere crackled with tension, heavy with revelations about to unfurl. "Claire," Lena began, her voice low, almost conspiratorial. "You have to trust me. There's something you need to know about your late father-in-law's dealings, financial and otherwise. It impacts you and Mark far more than you might realize." Claire leaned in, focusing intently. "What do you mean?" The urgency in Lena's expression pulled her deeper into a fog of anxiety mingled with fierce determination. Daniel was entangled in more than just investments. There were shadowy alliances, risky ventures. I found documents hinting at a plan to leverage the estate in ways that could ruin everything. Lena's words hit Claire like stones to her chest, each one a brutal reminder of the precariousness of her newfound clarity and resolve. "What kind of plan?" Claire prodded, unable to mask her alarm. "It's complex, and I can't piece it all together alone," Lena confessed. But he had an exit strategy, a way to bail out of the situation by using the estate's value. "There are beneficiaries named that you might not even know." Claire's heart raced. The implications were staggering. Who could Daniel trust? Who would benefit from this cascade of financial maneuvers? Mark had always portrayed his father as a good man, but this flickering insight revealed the possibility of a more duplicitous nature. Her grip tightened around the coffee cup, the porcelain chilled against her palms, grounding her racing thoughts. Why didn't anyone say anything sooner? Why did it take your investigation to unearth this? Her voice was sharper now, a mix of frustration and doubt. How had she allowed herself to be lulled into complacency? "Even I didn't know until very recently. I thought it was just mismanagement at first. But when I stumbled upon the hidden accounts transfers that didn't align with the official records, it raised alarms," Lena explained, her features grave, yet filled with a glimmer of hope that they could work together to uncover the truth. Taking a moment to collect her thoughts, Claire's mind raced through a multitude of thoughts. This wasn't just about confronting Mark anymore. It was about her role in this financial puzzle, and the potential fallout that could affect their lives. What if she was the key to unraveling deceit? The tension between her instinct to protect her family and the overwhelming need to expose the truth surged within her. "Tell me what we need to do," Claire asserted, her voice stealing with a newfound assertiveness. She would no longer be an onlooker in her life. She would take control, confront the shadows that loomed over her family, and shape the legacy they were bound to inherit. "I need someone on the inside." Lena's gaze held Claire's, a mix of urgency and vulnerability. "I can't dig deeper without your help, someone who knows how this family operates. It has to be discreet, but the situation is dire." Claire understood the weight of the decision in that moment. The road ahead would be fraught with treachery, skepticism, and potential confrontation with Mark. But there was no turning back now. The flicker of empowerment grew to a flame inside her, burning away her former trepidation. "Let us get to work," she said, resolve hardening in her chest. "We lay everything out on the table, and I won't back down until I uncover the truth about Daniel's dealings." The realization of her role, her voice in the unfolding narrative echoed in her mind. Each step mattered. She was finally standing at the helm of her fate. Yet, as the cafe bustled around them, a gnawing thought unsettled her gut. The more she unearthed, the more she risked losing not only Mark but everything they had built together. In unraveling the truth, who else might she hurt? The stakes had escalated, but just as Claire began to formulate a plan, she sensed the tension shift in the air. A figure loomed near their table, one Claire recognized all too well. Mark's presence flickered on the periphery just as she was prepared to dive deeper into her revelations. "Claire?" he called, uncertainty lacing his voice. Would he sense her change, her collusion with Lena? Or would it prompt an explosive confrontation? The moment of reckoning was upon them. Claire's heart pounded as she turned to face Mark. His brow furrowed slightly, a blend of concern and curiosity shadowing his features. For a brief moment, the world around her blurred. The clinking of coffee cups, the soft chatter of patrons faded into an indistinct hum. It was just the two of them, confronting a reality that felt alien yet eerily familiar. "Hey," she said, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Just a catch-up chat." Mark stepped closer, his stance subtly protective, still unaware of the tidal wave of revelations rushing toward them. "I was looking for you. What is going on? You've been so distant lately." Claire's mind spun, grappling with the weight of Lena's revelations and the need to maintain the facade of normalcy. A pang of guilt twisted her stomach. Their life had always been built on trust, secure in routine. Now, the sanctity of their relationship felt precarious, a high-wire act over an abyss of uncertainty. "Just adjusting, I guess," Claire replied, avoiding his piercing gaze. She could feel Lena waiting, tension rolling off her in waves, but something in Mark's voice anchored her, coaxing her to reconsider her next move. Should she divulge the truth? Or protect their fragile peace, at least for now? Mark's concern deepened, revealing the emotional undercurrents she had long taken for granted. "You know you can talk to me, right? I'm here for you. Always have been." Those words, woven with sincerity, drew a sharp contrast to the secrets lying in wait. The very things that drove her to this point now threatened to unearth something elemental within her. Claire had never been one to keep secrets, yet here she was at a proverbial crossroads, standing precariously between loyalty to Mark and the quest for truth. "What if I told you that everything I thought I knew was a lie?" she blurted out, the admission slipping past her lips before she could reel it back in. Mark's eyes widened, and for a fleeting second, Claire saw his confusion morph into something darker: fear. "What do you mean? Daniel's affairs, they're not as straightforward as we thought." Lena found some documentation about his dealings, risky investments, questionable transactions. "It could affect you and your family," she confessed, her voice trembling yet resolute as she confronted the repercussions of her disclosure. The coffee shop shifted in her periphery. Patrons glanced over, whispers dwindling to silence. Mark's response was immediate, a mixture of disbelief and anger threading through his voice. "And you're just now telling me this? What else have you discovered?" There was an edge to his tone, a warning of the storm brewing beneath his calm exterior. I was trying to process everything. I don't have all the answers yet, but I'm working with Lena to figure it out. Claire's defensiveness flared, ignited by her need for understanding. The vulnerability of their relationship teetered on the precipice, and she sensed the peril of every word she uttered. Working with Lena? Mark echoed, his voice sharpening. You mean the same Lena who you said you didn't trust? What's going on, Claire? Frustration bubbled inside her, the weight of secrecy pressed heavily on her chest. I'm trying to protect us, Mark. You need to understand that I'm not doing this to hurt you. I need to know what's happening before we're caught in the fallout. Silence then enveloped them, thick and oppressive. Claire's vulnerability hung in the air as she studied his changing expression. Did he see the truth reflected in her eyes? Or did he view her newfound strength as a betrayal? As the tension simmered, Lena cast a wary glance at Claire, an unspoken plea for immediate action. Claire recognized the urgency the longer she hesitated, the deeper the division between her and Mark grew. Please, we need to talk about this. Mark's voice softened, yet determination laced his words. Are you still with me, Claire? As she faced him, her resolve crystallized. She recalled the sense of empowerment that ignited when she had agreed to work with Lena. It was time to embrace this journey, both its risks and revelations. I want to uncover the truth, even if it means confronting you. Mark's expression transformed, the flicker of panic replaced by concern etched deep onto his features. Then let us face it together. Whatever it is, we'll deal with it. The spark of hope ignited within her once more, buoyed by his willingness to engage. Yet lurking behind that hope was dread. If they peeled back the layers, what truths would emerge? What fissures in their relationship would the revelations expose? As Claire took a deep breath, preparing to share more, the cafe door swung open and another figure stepped inside. Eyes met hers, their facade crackling with suspicion, a stranger, yet eerily familiar. A sense of impending conflict prickled at the back of her mind. Who are you? She muttered under her breath, anxiety swirling as uncertainty navigated her thoughts. An unexpected twist lay ahead, and Claire thought fleetingly of all that was at stake. Would the truth strengthen their bond or shatter it completely? A chill swept through Claire as the figure moved closer. The sharp lines of his suit and confident stride exuded an unsettling authority. His gaze locked onto Claire's, piercing through the haze of confusion that clouded her thoughts. The coffee shop seemed to shift once more, patrons now absorbed in their own dilemmas, oblivious to the charged atmosphere coiling around her. Claire Donovan? He asked, his voice smooth but laced with a tinge of urgency. Yes? She responded, the word escaping her lips barely above a whisper. Mark's expression darkened. He stepped protectively in front of her, a futile barrier against the unknown. Do we know you? I'm here about the estate, he said, directing his focus toward Mark, but keeping an eye on Claire. Richard Adams. Attorney for your father-in-law, Daniel Johnson. A fresh wave of dread washed over Claire, the name echoing ominously in her mind as her heart raced. Daniel's dealings, the secretive conversations, and now an attorney standing before her, his presence felt like a lead weight pressing onto her chest. Estate? Mark echoed, confusion merging with alarm. Daniel passed away unexpectedly 2 days ago. I'm here to discuss matters regarding the will, Richard replied, his tone devoid of any remorse, as if it were just another business matter to convey. Claire's breath hitched, the rapid unraveling of the last few days colliding with the gravity of this news. I had no idea, she stammered, barely registering the change in her reality. The urge to oscillate between shock and responsibility surged within her. Her mind raced, trying to stitch together the fragmented information Lena had shared, and the impression of danger it had triggered. Mark slipped a hand into his pocket, the subtle gesture revealing his tension. What does this have to do with Claire? He asked, his voice defensive. Richard straightened his posture, his expression tempered with professionalism. Your father-in-law's will contains a number of unexpected provisions. I believe it's crucial for Claire to be present during the reading, given her connection to the affairs at stake. Claire's throat tightened. The stakes were becoming overwhelming. What do you mean by unexpected provisions? She pressed, her need for answers igniting a latent determination. The gravity of this situation extended far beyond her initial concerns. Richard leaned in slightly, a knowing glimmer in his eyes. There are significant assets involved, financial dealings that could implicate not just the family, but also business associates. The details might reveal connections to matters you're already starting to uncover. Instinctively, Claire's gaze flickered to Mark, seeking reassurance, but instead meeting his conflicted expression a mixture of support and disquiet. This was no longer just about their relationship. The secrets enveloping their lives were expanding outward, threatening to engulf them both. Are you implying Daniel was involved in something illegal? Mark demanded, defensiveness morphing into raw concern now layered with disbelief. I'm saying there are complexities to his legacy that need to be addressed. Every family has skeletons, Richard responded, his demeanor calm yet imposing. Claire's heart raced as a new layer of uncertainty crept into her thoughts. Skeletons. The word hung heavy in the air. What had Daniel done to intertwine their lives within tangled webs they barely understood? I'll make time for the reading, Claire said, surprising even herself with the firmness in her voice. This was the moment she needed to embrace. Navigating the unknown waters of her father-in-law's legacy and the implications of Daniel's actions thrust her deeper into the whirlwind of discovery, both personal and professional. Mark nodded, throwing Claire an encouraging glance, yet his eyes betrayed his hesitation. We'll face this together, he affirmed, but an unspoken dread lingered in the air. What new truths lay ahead that could further fracture their foundation? As Richard left with a promise to confirm the details of the estate reading, Claire stood at the precipice of a personal evolution. She could either retreat back into the shadows of denial or step forward into the light of confrontation. This changes everything, she murmured to herself, eyes drifting back to the once familiar cafe, now a backdrop to an emerging battleground of secrets and revelations. With each tick of the clock, Claire felt the sands of her old life slip further from her grasp. A resolve solidified within her. She had to uncover the facades that had obscured her truth and redefine her role in this unraveling narrative. What darker realities awaited at the reading? In that moment, a profound realization washed over her. The battle for clarity was just beginning, and she was no longer willing to be a passive participant in her own life. The door swung open again, and she sensed yet another shift. Someone was coming to join the unfolding drama. Claire braced herself, knowing that this was merely the beginning of a revealing odyssey that forced her to confront not only Daniel's legacy, but also her own strength. Claire stood still, the cacophony of thoughts rushing through her mind like a stampede. The empty coffee cup in front of her seemed to echo her apprehension, the remnants of caffeine failing to clear the fog that swirled within her. The consequences of the estate reading loomed large, but she felt an unexpected flicker of resolve ignite against the encroaching darkness. With Mark still beside her, his presence a comforting weight, Claire's focus sharpened. I need to know what I'm dealing with, she said, her voice steadying as she pulled herself back into reality. If there are financial dealings that could implicate us, I can't just walk in blind. Mark sighed heavily, his brows knitting together in concern. We'll find out together. Together. Just remember, whatever happens, keep your wits about you. Was he trying to convince her or himself? Claire chose to interpret his words as support, planting the seed of defiance that had begun to bloom within her. They had faced challenges before. Why should this be any different? All right, she nodded, brushing aside the growing dread. First, I need to meet with Richard again before the reading. Claire tapped furiously on her phone, the screen lighting up as she navigated to the attorney's contact information Mark had saved from earlier. Instead of the disorienting swirl of emotions, she channeled her focus into actionable steps. She was not helpless, she could strategize. With a plan forming, she pressed the call button and listened intently to the dial tone. Richard? It's Claire. Can we meet ahead of the reading? I have questions. There was a pause, and she could almost sense his measured sigh on the other end. Of course, Claire. I'll be at the office at 2. As she hung up, Claire felt an unfamiliar weight shift. Knowledge combined with determination shaped a new identity, a woman unwilling to retreat or stay confined in silos of ignorance. Each heartbeat seemed to resonate with her rising resolve. "Let us grab some lunch before I head to the meeting," she suggested to Mark, keen to keep their minds off the ominous weight hanging over them. She needed clarity, and for that, she wanted to ground herself before veering into the unknown. They chose a nearby deli, where the bustling atmosphere provided a brief distraction. Claire picked at her sandwich, her thoughts unconsciously wandering back to Daniel. The complex man she had known, wrapped in layers of charm and secrets. What had he concealed beneath that polished exterior? Mark spoke, breaking her reverie. "You seem different today. More determined." "I have to be," Claire replied, her fork clattering onto her plate. "If we don't take control now, we'll get swept away. It's like being adrift without a compass." "Which direction do you want to go?" he asked, genuine concern flickering in his eyes. "To uncover the truth. It's the only option. I want to shy away from the reading. I need to own that space." Mark nodded slowly, appreciating her newfound intensity. Yet, she sensed an underlying worry. What if the revelations opened an abyss between them? Anguish and betrayal could tear through their relationship with the very secrets she aimed to unveil. The clock in the deli chimed, and Claire's heart raced. Their time was swiftly ebbing. She suddenly thought of all the possibilities ahead of her. "Mark," she began hesitantly, "what if there are things about Daniel that we can't bear to face?" Silence fell between them as Claire's question hung in the air. It held the essence of their conflict, a brewing storm ready to erode their understanding of loyalty and trust. Yet, as the worry dripped from Mark's expression, something else sparked within her. "Are you ready for what's coming?" she challenged, swiping the uneasiness aside, her voice gaining an almost fierce edge. "Are you with me?" Mark paused, and she could see him wrestling with the gravity of her inquiry. "I am, Claire. But I need you to promise that you'll protect yourself, whatever it reveals." The two of them shared an understanding, a mutual agreement underpinned with unspoken fears. Their bond would be tested irrevocably, but Claire wouldn't falter. She could feel the winds of change swirling, beckoning her toward the chasm of truth. As they left the deli, the looming appointment drew near like a shadow stretching toward twilight. The afternoon sun had begun to dip, illuminating the path ahead in golden hues. What awaited her in that office? Each tick felt resonant with suspense as she maneuvered past uncertainty, her heart tuned to an anthem of courage. The journey had only just begun, but Claire was anticipating the diary of secrets that would soon unfold. The stakes were high. With one revelation, everything could change. And in that moment of reckoning, she murmured to herself, "This time, I will not be swept away." Yet, the question lingered: how far would she have to go to guard her heart from the truths that may surface with the reading? Claire stepped into Richard's office, her heart pounding with a mix of anticipation and anxiety. The polished wood and leather furnishings felt strangely imposing, yet she resolved to take ownership of the space. This was the moment she would unearth the truth about her late father-in-law's estate and, potentially, about Daniel. "Claire." "Right on time," Richard greeted, his tone professional but warm. "Let's get down to business." He gestured for her to take a seat across from his desk. Claire settled in, her posture straightening as she prepared to ask the questions that had plagued her since receiving the notification about the estate reading. "Let me start by saying I understand this may be a tough conversation," Richard began, his demeanor shifting into a more serious mode. "Your father-in-law left behind a significant legacy, and with it, some complex arrangements." "Right. That's exactly what I need clarity on," Claire said, forcing the words through the tightness in her throat. "What financial dealings are we looking at? Are there hidden debts or obligations?" Richard examined her over the rim of his glasses, a flicker of surprise in his eyes as though he hadn't expected such directness from her. "Well, you might be surprised to learn surprised what I'm after," Claire interjected, a hint of urgency in her voice. "I need to know everything. Don't spare me any details. I can handle it." Richard narrowed his gaze, perhaps weighing her resolve. "Very well. There are aspects of the estate that go beyond mere financial statements. Your father-in-law's investments were diverse, to say the least. There's a possibility of significant debts as well as several secret partnerships. Claire's mind raced, each piece of information adding weight to her already heavy burden. Who are the partners? Richard leaned back in his chair, a calculated expression crossing his face. That's part of the problem. There are entities involved that are not exactly above board. Some names are familiar, they could implicate you and your family. Her stomach dropped. The thought of being tied to questionable individuals was unsettling, but strengthened her resolve to know the entire story. You need to give me names, Richard. I can't afford to tiptoe around this. All right, I will, but understand that the implications can be serious. As your understanding of the estate deepens, you may want to distance yourself from certain aspects. It could protect you in the long run. Protect me? From what? He paused again, as if weighing the consequences of his honesty. From legal repercussions. From reputational damage. Even from family conflict, depending on how this plays out. Then that's exactly what I need to know, she pressed, her voice firm. No more half-truths. Richard nodded, a grudging respect emerging in his posture. Very well. It might take some time to gather all details, but I will do my best to expedite the process. Prepare yourself, this may unravel deeper connections than you anticipate. Claire leaned back, a deep breath escaping her lips. Each revelation ignited a surge of determination. She needed to confront her fears, embrace whatever darkness lay ahead, and protect herself, and perhaps even Mark, from the fallout. Thank you, Richard. I appreciate your candor. Whatever comes next, I'm ready. As she stood to leave, the weight of her dealings hung heavy in the air. An unexpected ripple of exhilaration coursed through her as she walked out of the office. This was her journey now. Each decision would shape her reality, and Claire felt that surge of empowerment, that readiness to defy the odds confronting her. But as she stepped back into the daylight, questions began to swirl in her mind. What secrets would this estate divulge? And how far was she willing to go to untangle the web of her father-in-law's life? With each step toward her car, a singular thought crystallized within her. She would not only fight for answers, but for her right to define her future. And in the back of her mind lingered the jagged knot of possibility. What if the truth would not only shatter everything she knew, but also forge a path she never anticipated? The estate reading loomed closer, an impending storm she was both drawn to and terrified of. What awaited her at the reading could alter the course of her life forever. She welcomed the challenge that lay ahead, each breath echoed with the promise of transformation. Would she emerge stronger, or would the truth prove too devastating to bear? Claire leaned back against her car, the midday sun warming her skin yet failing to dispel the chill creeping into her bones. 1,000 thoughts whirled through her mind. The secrets she had just glimpsed felt like shards of glass, sharp and dangerous. Richard's revelation about the potential for deep family connections with unscrupulous individuals weighed heavily upon her. She slipped into the driver's seat, her pulse still racing. The air felt electric, imbued with the weight of unknown possibilities. Today hadn't just been about the estate, it had ignited a fire within her. The urge to uncover the complete truth was now an unquenchable desire, a burning commitment to navigate the treacherous waters ahead. As she drove back home, Claire's thoughts began to organize around a plan. She needed a strategy. Knowing that the estate was complicated and potentially poisonous, her purpose crystallized into two pivotal tasks: gather information and fortify her defenses. She shook her head, a smile teasing her lips. This felt like a game, albeit one with high stakes. The old Claire might have hesitated, but this new version embraced the challenge. Head-on.at home. Claire immediately headed to her study, a small sanctuary decorated in muted tones where she often found clarity. The walls were lined with books on legal matters, finance, and even familial responsibilities, all items her late father-in-law had amassed over his lifetime. As she thumbed through the titles, a realization struck her. The answers might already be lying in his books. They could contain clues about the tangled networks he was involved with. She quickly organized a small stack, her fingers running over the bindings as if they held more than mere words. Each title evoked thoughts of her father-in-law, his aspirations, his failures, and now this unknown legacy he had left behind. Would these pages offer insights into his true character? Settling down with a cup of tea, Claire began to delve into a book on estate management. The legal jargon felt daunting at first, but as she turned pages, the concepts began to connect in her mind. She quickly jotted down notes, her handwriting neat and meticulous, reflecting her determination. There was a certain satisfaction in taking control of her legacy, not allowing it to control her. Midway through her reading, confusion bubbled up. Terms like fiduciary duty and liabilities danced off the page, and suddenly, everything about the estate felt more personal. This was more than financial jargon. This was part of her potential new reality. Each word struck her as a reminder of the strategic steps she needed to take, not just to protect herself, but to carve out her own identity away from her father-in-law's formidable presence. Just as an idea began to crystallize, perhaps even a plan to confront Richard again about these issues, a sudden knock at the door jolted her from her thoughts. Heart racing, she approached cautiously and opened it to find Mark standing there, his expression a mix of concern and curiosity. "Hey, I was thinking about you," he began, glancing at the stack of books on the table. "What is going on?" Claire took a deep breath, deciding to share her recent discoveries. "You won't believe what I found out about my father-in-law's estate." As she spoke, Claire noticed Mark's brow furrow, the gravity of the situation settling with each revelation. She felt a thrill of empowerment seeing his supportive demeanor. Here was someone who believed in her ability to tackle the daunting path ahead. Despite the looming uncertainties, Claire felt an unexpected sense of camaraderie as she shared the burden with him. "We might need to build a case, investigate who these entities are," she proposed, adrenaline coursing through her as she outlined her thoughts. "This is huge, Claire," Mark replied, his voice steady. "You're not just protecting the estate, you're redefining everything. Are you prepared for the fallout?" The weight of his words hung in the air, but Claire's determination had solidified. "I now realize that the challenge is far more than financial. It's about owning my story, and I want to run away from it." Together, they strategized an approach, but Claire felt a twinge of apprehension. How deep did this rabbit hole go? And who were these partners that could plunge her family into disarray? As darkness settled in and curiosity morphed into a formidable resolve, Claire's thoughts drifted toward the upcoming reading. The secrets of her father-in-law's life were waiting to be unearthed, but with them would come choices that would define her. What awaited her next might ignite passions within her that she had yet to discover. Would she be able to withstand the revelations about the estate and her family? Would she rise to seize the narrative or become overwhelmed by it instead? Claire sat at the kitchen table, the sunlight streaming through the window as she prepared for the estate reading. Her heart thudded steadily in her chest, not from fear, but from a deep-seated resolve that had blossomed throughout this harrowing journey. She glanced at the pile of meticulously organized documents before her, each piece of paper representing a brick in the wall she was building for her future. This was her moment of truth, where the layers of her father-in-law's legacy could either shroud her in darkness or unveil a path toward empowerment and discovery. Mark paced the living room, the tension palpable. She saw the worry etched in his face and realized he was balancing on the knife's edge of uncertainty. "Are you ready for this?" he asked, the concern in his voice careful, yet filled with admiration for her courage. "I have to be," Claire replied, her voice steady and confident. "This isn't just about the estate, it's about reclaiming my narrative." She could feel the shift within herself as she prepared to confront whatever secrets lay hidden in the will, both for their family's sake and her own dignity. As they arrived at Richard's office, Claire felt a sense of purpose. She had navigated through treacherous emotional waters and emerged on the other side, a fierce warrior determined to protect her family and challenge the legacy of a man she was only beginning to understand. Richard greeted them with a nod, his demeanor slightly more respectful, as if he sensed the positive shift in Claire's energies. The room was filled with an air of suspense as Richard began reading the will. Claire's heart raced, each spoken word a revelation, sculpting the contours of their future. To Claire Donovan, I bequeath that which stands to allow you access and control over the Johnson family business, Richard proclaimed. The words hung in the air, a declaration that felt both surreal and empowering. Claire's breath caught. Control? She echoed, her mind racing. This was the unexpected turn of events she had not anticipated. With that single word, the dynamic of their family's legacy transformed. Yes, Richard confirmed. You will have the authority to navigate discussions regarding outstanding debts, partnerships, and management decisions. But with this power comes responsibility. Claire couldn't help but feel a rush of exhilaration, mixed with apprehension. The implications were profound. She was no longer merely the caretaker or the silent partner. She was being handed the reins to guide this family through the tumult of their financial reality. The path ahead shimmered with potential. As Richard continued his reading, Claire allowed herself a moment to revel in the transformative power of the moment. She was no longer defined by someone else's identity. This legacy was intertwined with her own voice, shaping her into a catalyst for change. Emboldened, she stored away the fears that once threatened to entrap her. I accept this responsibility, and I will face this legacy head-on, she declared, ready to embrace her new role. Mark's demeanor shifted at her declaration. Admiration and understanding flared in his eyes. He stepped closer, intertwining their fingers, a silent pact forming between them. Let us discover the full extent of Daniel's affairs together, he vowed, a hint of resolve reinforcing their bond. Claire nodded in agreement. They would face the complexities ahead together, side by side. After the reading concluded, outside the office, Claire took a deep breath. She could feel the radiant warmth of the sun on her back, signaling the dawn of a new chapter. Reflection of her journey filled her with gratitude. The obstacles that had once immobilized her were now stepping stones toward clarity and purpose. Claire realized that in reclaiming her voice, she had carved out a space for improvement within her marriage. She felt the undercurrents of healing begin to wash over her relationship with Mark, fueled by newfound trust and communication. Together, they had expanded this narrative beyond their struggles and into shared ambition. As they drove home, Claire's mind raced with plans to organize the family business, confront Daniel's hidden affairs, and strategically protect their future. For the first time in a long while, she felt fearless, a woman empowered to uncover the truth and lead with integrity, compassion, and fortitude. In that moment of realization, she knew her journey had only begun. Claire had harnessed her fears and turned them into motivation, proving to herself and Mark that she was not simply a pawn in someone else's game, she was a formidable player in her own right. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Claire turned to Mark, her eyes shining with fierce determination. Let us rebuild this legacy together, she said. The challenges ahead will shape us, but I believe we can conquer anything if we do it as a team. Mark smiled, his worries fading as they ignited a shared vision for their future, a bold proclamation that they would forge a path together, resilient against the shadows of their past. Her heart overflowed with gratitude, not just for what she had uncovered, but for the realization that she was no longer just Claire the wife and mother. She was becoming Claire, the architect of her own destiny. No longer settling for shadows. Claire embraced her newfound strength with open arms. The legacy had become hers to shape. Now was the moment where change began, and she approached the future resolutely, bold, assertive, and unwavering. What revelations awaited her next would not deter her. They would only strengthen her resolve. So ask yourself, are you ready to confront the legacies in your own life? Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. It really makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is your chance to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to get involved. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting every powerful narrative.